G'day everyone, welcome back to another live stream here at the Australian Reptile Park. My name's Dan and today we're going on a little egg hunt with my main man, Kraken the Komodo dragon. So we'll have a look down at Kraken. He's heading the wrong way at the moment. But what I've done off in the yonder, I've actually laid a few eggs out for Kraken to go and find. So actually while he sits there, we might just talk about him for a little bit. So this is Kraken, he's our male Komodo dragon. We do have two Komodo dragons that call the Reptile Park home. The male is the one we're looking at right now. He's a little bit larger than our female. Kraken weighs approximately 45 kilograms, whereas our female, our beautiful Komodo Daenerys, she only weighs about 25 kilograms. Now, if you've been keeping up with our social pages recently, you might have seen a really cool video of our Komodo dragons mating, which is pretty exciting. We have been pairing our Komodo dragons. We're not anymore, but we paired them for about 10 days. And we got to see our Komodo dragons behaving in a really incredible way, watching them obviously go through their natural breeding cycle. Oh, let me pick him up. We'll just take him a bit over that way. And hopefully he'll, I might have to pick him up twice because he likes climbing these rocks. But I actually want him to head in this direction. So I'll use my, there we go, go that way. Oh, he's 45 kilos, so there's plenty of weight about him. You don't want to be picking them up too much, but I'm just sending him in the direction of the food. So as I said, we paired the Komodo dragons a number of times. You can watch the video online, it is really cool. Obviously, potentially quite dangerous because Kraken is substantially larger than Daenerys. If he was to bite her, he could cause her serious injury. But thankfully, they behaved perfectly. She was quite receptive towards Kraken and they obviously mated for about 10 days and then were separated after that. So hopefully soon, we'll get on to the next stage, which will be her laying some eggs. All right, let's see. Speaking of eggs, how's that for a, whatever that word is?
Segue.
A segue is the word I was looking for. That's why Caitlin's here to back me up. All right, so I've got a few eggs for Kraken to feed on. There's, I can't even remember how many I put out. I probably put out 6 or 7 and I buried a few under some leaf litter. So hopefully what he'll do is he'll continue on his merry way eating eggs. Now this is a really small feed, to be honest, for Kraken, and it's more for you guys at home watching, but also too, why it's important for him, it's quite enriching. So he gets to come outside and go for a big walk, but also too, he gets a reward during his walk, which is a few bits of feed. Now typically if we're feeding Kraken, we would stick to much larger food items. We'd carcass feed them and the like. But today I've just put this food out here to get him moving and then him looking for more food. Look, he's seen the other egg and he's picking up on it straight away. Now, what was interesting about that is I actually saw him look over and he saw the egg. So he wasn't necessarily relying on his tongue for that moment. He actually saw the egg off in the distance. He raised his head up really high, and you think of where they get the name monitor from, because of course Komodo dragons are the world's largest monitor species. He put his neck up, he had a really close look, and he could see the other egg, and then he immediately headed towards it, because Komodos do have pretty good eyesight. But what we're seeing now, we've got some drool coming out the side there, is that tongue starting to vigorously flick out. So now he's trying to pick up the scent particles left behind by those eggs. Look, see, head up, and he spotted the egg. That is really, really cool for you guys to be able to see. Put his head up nice and high, he spotted the third egg, and now he's moving over to eat it, which is really, really cool. So as I said, this is really enriching, not just for you guys watching, but also too for our big, beautiful lizard as well. But I did mention typically we'll feed them larger food items, and something like Kraken could eat, you know, a fairly substantial amount of meat from something like a goat or maybe a pig or something like that. But we do mix it up quite a bit, and the reason we like to mix it up is just like in the wild, because they are a scavenger species. We try and provide them with various different feeds, because they do feed on a lot of different things, whether it's fish or turtle or deer or even potentially water buffalo. So we're seeing the same behavior again. He's lifting his head up nice and high, and he's got his eyes fixated, and now his tongue following that trail, and he's found the next egg. When he opens his mouth like that, you can see a whole lot of drool, but what's probably hard to see is his teeth, and that's because the gums are covering the teeth quite a bit, but he does have pretty large teeth, and they're serrated along the back, so not only are they big, but because of the serrations, it makes them quite sharp. So if he was to grab you, he could cause serious damage just from those teeth. They have a lot of teeth, and the bite from a Komodo dragon, particularly on a keeper, would be quite horrendous. Thankfully though, our Komodo dragons are pretty relaxed, and we can work in quite closely with them, even with their feeding, and I'm not too worried about his movements too much at all. He's not really worried about us, he's just looking for the next food. And then he's going to look at the camera for a second. Isn't that cool? Look at his big tongue. Now the hardest bit. Remember before, every single time he lifted his head up and he kind of looked to see where the food might be. But this time he's having a bit of trouble, so he's relying more so on that tongue. And what we've got to be careful of is our movement. But if I move that a little bit and kind of send him in that direction, that little bit of movement, my fingers kind of rubbing around inside of the leaf litter there, will send him on the trail for the next eggs. Let's see how long it takes him to find them. Not very long at all, I'd imagine. So we just got to be a little bit more careful here because his senses are really heightened at the moment. And that's because you can't actually see. So he knows the food's there. So what we don't want to do at the moment is move too much. If we can stay nice and still, he'll stay focused on the food and then he'll start digging away and he's all right. So far he's found nothing, but there is a few eggs in there for him. But you can see, look at him working overtime. The tongue vigorously flicking away, but also too using his front forelimbs to scratch away at the leaf litter that's buried on top of the eggs. Now this is not too different to what you might see of a monitor lizard doing out in the wild. If they come across the nest, they definitely will raid the nest trying to find any food inside of that particular nest. So our lace monitor would be a good example of doing something like that, maybe even in another lace monitor in a termite mound. But what we're watching now is he knows the food's there, but he hasn't quite pinpointed exactly where it is. He knows it's in this vicinity, but he hasn't been able to locate it perfectly. So he's starting to move around, he'll flick his tongue out, and then what he'll realise is the further he moves away, he's actually moving further away from the food. We'll just follow him. If he heads back there, he heads back there. If he doesn't, well, it is what it is. So the reason we take them out on walks like this is it's great exercise. It's really important for their mobility and also their longevity. Komodo dragons in the wild can live for about 40 years, and we want to ensure that Kraken stays really fit throughout the entirety of his life, so he lives for at least that long. At the moment, he's just turned 10, so I'd like to think that I'll be looking after Kraken for at least another 20 or 30 years. But keeping them active, mobile and fit, it's not too dissimilar to us. If you keep the body moving, you make sure you eat nice and healthy, well exercised, well hydrated and nice and warm, hopefully then we'll have a really fit, healthy, happy Komodo dragon. So this is really cool. So he's still trying to find where the food is. It's literally right in front of him, but his senses are kind of sending, he knows it's there, but he hasn't just been able to find that perfect scratch point, but he will in a few seconds. There's no doubt about it. It's not like I made it a really hard job for him. In fact, I only buried it under, really a thin layer of leaf litter. But yes, bit of sensory overload at the moment, and that's because he's obviously quite excited by the fact that it is feeding time out on his walk. All right, so Komodo dragons are not endemic to Australia, so you won't find them living in this country, but you will find them in Indonesia. Oh, there we go. You will find them in Indonesia. Komodo Island is obviously in the Lesser Sunda Islands, but Komodo Island is probably the most famous island, and that's also too where the majority of Komodo dragons do live. There's at least over 5,000 Komodo dragons on that island, but also too there's a couple of neighbouring islands, Flores, which is quite large in comparison to Komodo, and a couple others as well, is where you might find a Komodo dragon living in the wild. It's a beautiful part of the world. It is quite warm. And that's why our Komodos inside their exhibit are always maintained at least a 30-degree ambient temperature every day. So if you've ever been to Darwin before and you walk off the plane and you realise how hot and humid it is, that's how we try and keep the Komodos here at the Reptile Park. Obviously, it's pretty cool in this part of New South Wales today, but that's why he'll go back into his warm exhibit in a second. Can anyone see that missing egg? He's missed one. He's missed one. He knows it's there though. He knows it's there. He's actually just put more leaf litter on top of it. Well, this is really fun and something a little bit different to our normal walk is just watching them behave quite naturally. It's really, really cool, even for the keepers and Caitlin is watching right now to enjoy moments like this and for you guys at home. Now, Komodo dragons do grow quite large. They are the largest living lizard species. They can reach weights of approximately 100 kilograms. Kraken's 45, so you could imagine he's still got plenty of growing to go. He probably will never reach weights of 100. It will be a little bit smaller than that, but you're talking about a lizard that eventually will get to around 60 to 60. Oh, he's just fallen over. All right, that was my fault. He got the lead stuck around his arm, and he nearly went like Jake the other week, and he nearly went straight over the top. That was the most awkward thing I've ever seen our Komodo dragon do ever. Anyway, we're moving on. Now you probably want, how do I know Krakens are male? Well, they are sexually dimorphic. The males grow larger than the females do, and there's a substantial weight difference. Big girls are 30, 35, maybe 40 kilograms. Males can be twice as big as that. Are you going to find that last egg for me, mate, so we can move on after you've done your little flip? You would have looked good in the Olympics. There we go. There's another little egg of something. I don't know what that was, but moving on. So anyway, we're going to continue on with this amazing demonstration. Now, do we have any questions at home, Caitlin, while we're...
Yeah, what other kind of enrichment do you do for our Komodos?
Look, so we try and... Their biggest lobe enrichment is the walk. So every day they go for an hour walk right around the park grounds, and they can cover as much space as they want to whilst that happens.
He's about to find the last egg.
He's found the other egg.
I think he's
onto it.
Potentially.
Still recovering. But their walk is probably their biggest enrichment. We'll enrich their lives with food as well, but also too, we'll put various different things into their exhibit. So we might put eucalyptus browse or bamboo browse. Basically, we try and provide them any stimulants to make them move around as much as possible.
I think he might be...
No, it's just in front of him. Yeah, he's still trying to find it. There is one more egg left.
We saw a lot of drool coming out before. Is that what his venom is?
Yeah. So typically, what he would need. So obviously they do harbour quite a lot of fluid anyway, particularly when they get really excited and they're feeding. But really, what would happen if he was going to bite something and envenomate it? He would bite down. The muscle contractions would then activate that venom glands, and then also because of the serrations in the teeth, creating an open wound. Then the venom would go in. So it's not so much venom right now, it's more just his normal saliva, just like you and I would have in our mouths, to be honest. Well, that was the last little bit of food. I don't know what that bonus one was, but that was his last bit of tucker. So all of his eggs have been found. That was a successful egg hunt for our beautiful Komodo Kraken. How about I go behind him so you can kind of ask me questions while we sit with him.
What happens to the prey once they've been envenomated?
So it really depends on the size of the food item, right? You could imagine if this was like a small goat. If Kraken was big enough that if he bit it and caused enough of a large wound, the animal's going to bleed to death quite quickly, right? You've got a large open wound. But then if you're a bigger animal like a water buffalo, if you have a large open wound that doesn't clot and bleeds profusely, you're going to weaken over time, which is going to enable the Komodo dragon maybe not to eat you that day, but follow that scent trail and potentially predate on you or feed on you at another time. So it is, I guess it's one of the more brutal ways to take down an animal in the wild, but that's why Komodo dragons have been able to sustain themselves for such a long period of time. You know, once upon a time, they used to feed, like Komodo dragons would have fed on small little pygmy elephants. Now, about 5 or so thousand years ago, we introduced some other megafauna to that region, things like water buffalo and obviously deer and stuff like that, which has kind of filled that large mammal food item niche for the Komodo dragon. So, yeah, it is a bit brutal, but in saying that, that's nature, and Komodo dragons are one of the most efficient predator species on the planet, because if you compare them to something like a lion or a tiger that has to feed quite regularly, he doesn't have to eat that often. So he can go long periods of time without feeding at all. And the other thing is too, he's quite happy just to mosey along, find a water buffalo that's died of natural causes and feed on that water buffalo. So even though they're a reptile and we kind of sometimes don't give them as much credit as they deserve, to be fair, having those, being a cold-blooded creature, an ectothermic creature I should say, and also know the fact that he doesn't have to feed that often really puts him at the top in terms of predatory species right around the world.
We've got a couple of people asking, what are the holes on the side of his head?
Yeah, so they're his ears. They look a little bit different to ours, but they do have a scale that covers the ear. They're called a tympanum. So they've got, that's their ears, their eyes, and their nostrils at the front there, or their nares. So they do have pretty good hearing. You will see them sometimes react to large, loud sounds in particular, but really it's their chemosensory skills, the smelling with the tongue, tasting with the tongue, smelling through their nostrils, but also too, on top of that, particularly if they're watching an animal close by, their eyesight's pretty good as well.
Where would a Komodo sleep at night in the wild?
Yeah, so, well, depending on how old they are. So if you're a small Komodo, you're probably going to want to keep yourself nice and safe at night, particularly away from other big Komodos because they are cannibalistic. So you might sleep up in a nice tall tree, just like our lace monitors will do here at the park and lace monitors will do out in the wild. But if you're a Komodo out in the wild, you just park yourself under wherever your home range is. You might park yourself under a tree or around some rocks or whatever. You'll just find somewhere comfortable and rest overnight. They are diurnal, so they're active during the day, and obviously that's when they do a lot of their feeding and stuff like that.
So we had some really exciting news this week with Kraken and Daenerys mating.
Yep.
How long do you think it'll be before she has eggs? Not a couple of weeks, maybe?
Yeah, so we're probably a little bit away from eggs, not too far. She's looking pretty good at the moment. We don't want to get too excited just yet because it's one of the most important things about breeding Komodos in captivity is actually really important for the female because they're known to have a lot of reproductive issues. So letting her go through that natural cycle. But all us guys, there'll be nights where we are restless and can't sleep because we'll be so worried about her. So the most important thing is that she gets the clutch of eggs out. From that, you've then got 9-10 months incubation. So a very long time between now and before we'd have little Komodos. But having them successfully copulate is a big part of that process, and we've been able to do that, which is really, really good. So to know that they can go together, not hurt each other, and mate, you got to make sure the timing's exactly right, and we got it pretty spot on this year. Can you stop filming the side of my head?
Why? What's wrong with the side of your head, Dan?
I had a horrible lockdown haircut, so someone called me Friar Tuck before, so I'm not too happy about that.
Give us a spin then.
What's that? Yeah, is it?
Oh, it's not too bad.
It's not too bad. Anyway, it's not my best haircut I've ever had, but my partner said, no, I've got it covered. She's done a terrible job. So anyway.
So if we do get baby Komodo dragons, how big will they be when they hatch?
They're actually quite small, to be honest. When they hatch out of an egg, you're talking about a lizard that's this long. That's not including tail. So they've got a pretty long tail. So they're not very big at all. And then you'll probably a couple of years before they have any substantial growth, really. Like they, obviously, because they're in captivity, they will grow quite quickly. But you're talking about a lizard that'll be quite small. And then, yeah, lots, like, look, he's 10, and that's how big he is. So they are quite small for a period of time. But in saying that, they're not small compared to other lizards, but compared to a giant male adult Komodo dragon, yeah, they are quite small. But who knows? Keep an eye out on our socials. We're hopeful, fingers crossed. Keep your fingers and toes crossed for me at home.
How long will it be before they're independent?
Independent from day dot. So fully precocial. They don't need any, the parents take no care after them or anything like that. Once they're out of an egg, they have to need to fend for themselves. And the scary thing is like if in the wild, if you're a little Komodo dragon, you've hatched out an egg, you're running around. If you bump into a big one like this, there's a good chance you might try and eat you. So fully dependent from day one. They'll just have a little bit of help from us at the start in terms of making sure their husbandry's covered, but also too their feeding and all that kind of stuff.
So what would the babies eat when they're just hatched?
We'll probably start them on insects at the start, smaller insects, larger insects, and then we'll kind of go from there and start introducing more protein sources, so small rodents and stuff like that, maybe small chickens, small quail eggs, things like that. So we'll keep it quite varied for them. We want to make sure that because they're growing, that we keep the protein levels right, but also too the calcium intake's good as well, which is really good important for their bone development. So yeah, it'll be a whole new world, like I've raised lace monitors before, and they're probably one of the closest living relatives to the Komodo dragon, if not the closest living monitor lizard to the Komodo dragon. So it can't really be that different, to be fair, in terms of raising them, but obviously it's a little bit different because you're dealing with the world's largest living lizard species, and no one's really hatched Komodo dragons in Australia before, so it'll be all new world for me and the Reptile team and the guys at the park.
So we can see that Kraken loves eggs. He won't eat Daenerys' eggs, will he?
He can't get to them. Yeah, he can't get to them. So if he could, yeah, he probably would eat them, to be honest, and I don't think she'd like that very much, and she'd probably be quite defensive towards Kraken at the start anyway, but she would have no chance at stopping him. So that he doesn't have access to where she's nesting. He actually doesn't have access to her unless we put him in together. So they actually can't get in together, because if it was the wrong time of year and she was a bit aggressive towards him, he's a pretty relaxed lizard, to be honest. But if we got the timing wrong, you know, he could cause serious damage to her. So we need to be careful about that all the time.
Kraken doesn't seem to care about being around the kangaroos. Is that true?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? So you've got what you would classify as well, they don't eat kangaroos in the wild because they're not going to come across them, but you would still consider that a prey species. It's a small mammal, is fairly close to Kraken right now, but he knows out on this walk, he's so used to being out here and having people walking around, kangaroos walking around, even the ducks. We've got some little ducks over there and some ducklings, that this isn't really feeding time. Obviously, we provided food for him today, but he doesn't associate, which is good, the kangaroos or the local ducks, our beautiful chestnut teals, with food.
All right, Dan, last question.
Yeah.
It's no secret that Kraken is one of your favourite animals to work with. Why do you love Kraken so much?
Oh, I think, as a reptile keeper and a reptile lover, which I am, Komodo dragons are the ultimate species to work with. I'm very lucky to work with Kraken. Obviously, I've got Galapagos tortoises and all that, but I mean, he's just such a cool lizard. So as a reptile keeper, I think for the rest of my life, I always want to be able to work with Komodos because they just are so interesting, but also such great animals to work with. But yeah, I think it's more so like I just appreciate the fact that I get to spend my days with a lizard like this. So if you ask Jake or any other guys, they'd say exactly the same. All right, I think we're going to wrap it up now. It was a good live stream. I hope you enjoyed that. Kraken did his job. Lots of pretty entertaining, to be fair. We're still closed. We hope to be open soon. If you want to learn how you can help the reptile park, I think we've got that promotion going with Adopt an Animal.
Yes.
That's
yep.
going, yeah. You, go online, more info on there. But I think you can win $5,000 if you adopt an animal. So check that out.
Before the end of August.
Before the end of August. Isn't that tomorrow?
It is.
Get on fast, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Hopefully we'll be open at some point and we'll be able to get you guys all back here. Keep watching the live streams throughout the rest of the week. Tomorrow will be good. We're telling you about the difference between crocs and gators. And Jake the Snake, who's he's in over there doing some work. He'll be talking to you about gators and crocodiles tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. Hooroo.